Like to welcome Ashish Aggarwal on our podcast series. Ashish Aggarwal is a co-founder and CTO for Productiv.ai. Before that, Ashish, you've done multiple hats across Postmates, Microsoft, Amazon, and IIT Delhi pass out, very much from our own country. We're proud to have you as a co-founder in the US. So welcome on our show, Ashish.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here, Roopa.
Awesome. So I don't know if you've read the book by Simon Sinek, which is Start with Why. If you have happened to read that book, I'm sure you would have started with the first question: why productive? Why should we actually be getting into a specific, domain, and why should we look at a SaaS platform of this sort? What was your why in terms of this, Ashish?
Absolutely. And I haven't read the book, but we did answer the question, why productive? In fact, we answered multiple questions there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to take you back a little bit into why we started a company at all to begin with, and then we come to why productive. I had, as you mentioned, I've been in Microsoft, eBay, Amazon, big companies for a good part of my career, for 20 years or more. And then at some point, I felt that I need to do more. In some sense, I felt the Maslow's hierarchy, biting
Mm-hmm.
at me and saying, "Hey, you have probably reached in some level, the second to the top level, and the only thing left there is go up is to self-actualize. Self-actualization was the thing that I have after, which my interpretation of it was, do the most impact that you can have, the most impact you can have in the world. Now, if I could solve word hunger, I would have, but that was not the skill that I had acquired. So my path to self-actualization was through technology, right? Have the maximum impact I can by building some net new technology, by solving a big problem in some sense, right? Through technology. Which roughly translates to do a tech startup, right? Find a good problem and do a tech startup.
Mm-hmm.
But the motivation was to self-actualize. But before I joined or started a company of my own, this was a romantic idea, find a big problem, get some money or some partners and solve it. I had no idea how startups work. I had no idea how I would like it, the day-to-day of it, what are the mechanics of it. I had been, as you mentioned, I was a big company, kind of a big company guy, if you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, let me try things out. So I was in Seattle. I said, there are two things that need to happen. One, I need to move to the mecca of startups, which is Silicon Valley. So
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Silicon Valley. And then I said, in Silicon Valley, I need to get my feet wet into the startup arena. So, go halfway. Don't get into a super small startup and don't get into an Uber. Go halfway. Go start at a biggish company, but which is still a startup. So I joined Postmates, familiar domain, from logistics and marketplace, eBay, Amazon kind of combination, and software obviously. And Postmates was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Postmates was really a startup which operated like a small startup, even though it was well funded by the time I joined. There were only 37 engineers when I joined. I eventually tripled the team while I was at Postmates. The technology, a lot of it needed to be built. It was almost like a startup in its early years, not a startup in its later years. There was all that hunger, all the fast decision making, all the speed, all the rapid communication between executives and the team. All of that, I loved it. I was like, I thought Amazon was fast, but here I am at Postmates, and this thing is like blazingly fast. And I loved it. So after a couple of years, I said, well, the feet wetting has been done more than enough. I'm knee deep in this thing. There's never a good time to do the next step. But I decided to say, okay, what? Let me go do something. Again, the same self-actualization. Let me take the next step. Find some like-minded partners, co-founders who think in the same direction, who are complementary, and so on and so forth. and then find a problem. So really, the why productive came the last in this
Mm-hmm.
equation. The first question to answer was, hey, what do I want to do? What is the goal long term, which was self-actualization via a tech startup. The second thing was, you know, well, the first goal was self-actualization. The second goal was how to do a tech startup. And the third was, okay, now which one, or find a partner, and then which one. So then I started looking. I found, my co-founders, Munish and
Mm-hmm.
Jody. Munish and I went to IIT Delhi together. We have been in touch off and on. He
Sure.
went into the business side, the dark side. Jody also went to the kind of the dark side. He started his career as a CS engineer from Cornell, but then he did his MBA, and then he joined Google, and he went from engineering to product and whatnot. I make fun of both of them. That hey, I stayed true to engineering, although you two also started as an engineer. But regardless, I mean, amazing people. And so once
Mm-hmm.
the three of us, found each other and liked each other from our values perspective and our goal perspective, in our own words, we had similar or some variations of this self-actualization. We all wanted to build a very big, company, solve a very big problem through technology. And
Mm-hmm.
then came the question of which problem, which is basically what you asked, why productive? And when you asked which problem, we looked at dozens of problems that we explored together, saying, okay, now that three of us are committed to starting something together, which problem should we solve? And we looked for his three parameters. It has to be a big enough problem, which means it's deep enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Painful enough, if you want to call it that. So big definition is, to me, a lot of people want to solve this problem, and the pain is deep enough that it will be
Mm-hmm.
impactful if they solve it for them. It's not
Sure.
just some small problem. The second thing is, it needs to be solvable.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not solvable, then what will we do about it? And the third thing is, needs to be unsolved, because if it's already solved, well, then you are too late to the party. And these three things together are extremely hard to get. I mean, you can take a big problem which is solvable, but then it should be solved. Like building a smartphone is a very big problem. Everybody wants $1,000 a piece. It's solvable. We know we have smartphone, it's solved. There will be problems which are very big and unsolved. Going to Mars is a very big problem. It is unsolved, mostly because it's unsolvable. So yeah, I can start a going to Mars company or housing on Mars, but no point. It's not unsolvable as of today. And then there
Sure.
are not many examples of the third kind. So the thing that we found, the aha moment that we found, was that this is not an equilibrium state. You can't find a problem which is all three at the same time. It doesn't stay like that for a long time. Problems flip into the state and then flip out of the state very quickly. So a
Mm-hmm.
problem which was earlier unsolved, some technology breakthrough will happen, or some breakthrough will happen, some building block will happen, that problem becomes solvable, right? Mobile games probably were always, kind of a good idea, but then smartphone came by. That was a building block that enabled a large market. So either the problem becomes solvable, or the problem is already solvable and unsolved, but it becomes big. A market appears for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking for those two, and given our background, in enterprise software for a large part, Google Analytics was led by Jody. I was in enterprise in Microsoft and partly in eBay.
Sure.
So a lot of our background came from not just technology, but from enterprise technology, from data, and from marketplaces. And so we started looking at problems that are in this state, and where we have an edge. So there are two questions: why this problem, which is kind of why
Mm-hmm.
now, and then why us? What edge do we have? Why doesn't somebody else solve that? And that's where Productiv came by. So Productiv, sorry for this long thing, but hopefully
No
it gives
worries.
you context on why Productiv.
Sure.
Why Productiv? Because the problem of SaaS sprawl, the problem of saying, I have hundreds of SaaS applications growing in my portfolio. What do I do about them? There are tons of questions around that. We can go about that. But that problem was becoming a big, big problem in 2017, 2018-ish time frame. It was really just going through that hockey stick growth curve and still growing like that. And so the problem had become big. And we found ourselves uniquely positioned as the three founders to go attack that problem and solve that problem. And hence Productiv came by, a business facing problem based in data, or the solution is based in data, which we have experience in. And the problem has just appeared to be, a very, very fast growing problem.
Sure.
Currently, we are broadly treated as, the leading player in the space just after 2.5 years, right? And when we started, there were a couple other startups, kind of attacking this problem. But at least my feeling is we have done very well in meeting and beating them in the sense of a solution that works better.
Sure. So the very first time when we spoke, this is exactly when you began your journey. I think you just about started 1.5 years ago is when we connected, Ashish, if you recall. I was really baffled with what you guys were, solving, what SaaS was doing. So why don't you just tell our viewers on what is the problem, what does Productiv solve? A little bit like, for a layman like me, you explained it so well. So if you can please help us there.
Absolutely. I'll take an analogy. It's not perfect, but it's a layman analogy, right?
Sure.
So SaaS applications, software as a service applications, are applications that anybody can go in the enterprise. Anybody can go and buy some applications for their team. So for example, maybe your company uses WebEx, but your sales team says, hey, we want to use Zoom. So your sales manager can go and buy, whatever, 50 licenses of Zoom for just your team, and so on and so forth. And the next thing you know, because everybody is buying things, left and right, there is a huge collection of SaaS applications in your portfolio. And mostly you don't know about it, right? If we ask CIOs, and we asked CIOs, we asked leaders of IT, well, how many SaaS applications do you have? And they said, well, about 350 that we know of. Whoa. Most people said we don't know of. Most people said we don't know. And many said some number, but that we know of. We know that we don't know of all. We keep finding them every week. The analogy is your closet, right? It's in your house. How many t-shirts do you have? How many shirts do you have? How many dresses do you have? You say, well, there's a lot. We've been buying stuff for like 10 years now, or whatever time. There's a ton of things everywhere in I don't even know where it is, right? So what's the first thing you do? You say, okay, you know what? If I want to start clean, in our household, we used to do Diwali cleaning, right? So what do you do on Diwali cleaning? You get everything out in the open. You do a full inventory of everything, right? Now it's a one-time thing or once a year thing. It's very manual, very time consuming, but you have to do full real-time inventory. And that's what the first step that our customers wanted. First problem to solve is show me everything that I have. Find out. But don't just find out automatically, find out in real time. This is not a once in a year kind of a thing. I don't want to do this manually. I don't want to create spreadsheets. I don't want to poll my employees on what do you have. Imagine if every dress of yours had a RFID tag or something, and it automatically kind of, kept pinging your iPhone saying, oh, you open your iPhone, you say, okay, I know exactly all my addresses and where they are. So that's the first problem. What do I have? The second problem is, okay, everything is now out in the open. I know what I have. What have I actually used in the last, 6 months or a year? Well, if I haven't worn anything for more than a year, maybe I should donate it. Maybe I should return it. I should do something about it, right? It's not really, I'm not using it. I thought I would be. Maybe the size is wrong now. Maybe something else is wrong. If you have already bought Zoom, maybe marketing team also bought some Zoom. Maybe some other person also bought some Zoom, and you still have the WebEx. So now you have 3 actually contracts for Zoom and 1 contract for WebEx. Come on, people, you just really need 1 contract. Maybe you need an enterprise-wide contract for Zoom or for WebEx or what have you, but probably need 1, not 4. Right. There is a lot of wastage, unused applications, unused licenses. You bought the gold medal version of something, you only need the bronze level medal because that's all you used, right? I bought I don't know, Netflix is popular in my household, So I bought
Mm-hmm.
the double 4K, double TV 4K plan plus 2 DVDs a month from Netflix. I only have one TV. It's not even 4K. I don't even have a DVD player. I mean, really, I don't need that plan. I just need a single TV, high definition plan from Netflix. I still use Netflix, but I don't need the platinum version plan. So all of this is wastage. All of this is app rationalization. In the SaaS word, similar thing, right? Similar to your clothes or your Netflix subscriptions. You need to deduplicate. So that's the second problem, right? The first problem was find what we have. The second is, yeah, rationalize. Say, okay, what am I actually using? What do I really need, right? The third thing is, okay, fine. I have all of these things now that I use somehow. Am I using them the right way? Am I maximizing the value that I bought these things for? I mean, I bought this tie and a coat, and yeah, I use it once a year, but I actually don't wear it to, I don't know, whatever, my board meetings, when it's actually recommended to wear it to board meetings, maybe something like that. An analogy breaks here. In applications, I bought Zoom up and down. Turns out I never turn on video. I never do screen sharing. How many people in my company do screen sharing when using Zoom? Well, only 32%. And what's the industry average? 63%. Oh shit. What does Zoom recommend? Zoom recommends maybe 80%, right? It's a very powerful thing. I'm paying for it. I'm using Zoom, but not getting enough value out of it. So that's what is value. The value is in productivity. That's why the name Productiv. And that's really the ultimate holy grail, right? The ultimate holy grail of why you bought all this technology was not for you to know the list of technologies. I mean, you cannot buy any technology and the list is empty and it's fairly easy to manage. It's an empty list. The goal is not to save money. Well, you cannot buy any technology and really you don't have to spend any money on it, right? Just work with paper and pen. The reason you bought technologies, SaaS applications, was for one single purpose. You wanted some set of employees to be more productive in their day-to-day work. That is really what the technology is supposed to do. Whether it is your Microsoft Office that is helping you, whether it's your video collaboration apps, whether it's your Salesforce, you name it. 300 out of 300, 500 out of 500 applications are somehow supposed to make somebody or the other more productive in your company. The question is, are they getting value out of it? And that's a very hard question. And that's why that's a very hard problem to solve. And there are various solutions to all of these that I can talk about. And so these are the three problems we solve, right? What all do you have? What should you have in kind of that you're not using, rationalize? How should you use what you have? And the fourth that I'll add quickly here is, in all of these three things, I only talked about what you already had in your closet, what you already had in your house, right? What should you have? How do you get that? You have a black shirt and a black tie and a black coat and a black trousers. Well, that's fine. We figured out all you have. We told you what you don't need. We figured out, told you what to use, more frequently. Turns out you really should have a blue tie. Come on, man. I mean, that goes better with these kind of clothing. If you have a box and a Zoom and a Slack, do you have SSO, single sign-on? No, we use different passwords for everything. Well, turns out most people who use, these three applications also deploy Okta. Just taking an example.
Sure.
Are you? Maybe not. Maybe I want a different one, but I should know. It's just like Amazon recommendations, right?
Correct.
You go there, it tells you if you already have these, this is what you should buy. That creates a marketplace. Right? The natural fourth problem is to say, what do I need to complete my portfolio or to get more productivity, and how do I get it? Today, the way to get these things is super, super complicated. It takes 6 months to acquire an application. It takes tens of thousands of dollars in the United States to kind of get these things, and at least 2 people in your company who are running after, procuring these applications, valuing these. All of these are hard problems to solve, and IT leaders and business leaders, want these to be solved one at a time. You can't really solve the level 4 problem if you don't even know what's in my house, right? So we start with real-time visibility, then we do rationalization of what you have, then we help you get more value out of it, and then eventually we help you build your complete portfolio. That is the problem of what we call SaaS management, complete management of your application portfolio. Does that help?
Actually, this is brilliant, because what rings a bell is this is not just cost optimization that you guys are talking about, what to use, but there is also about how to use them, which means efficiency at a very large scale, because you're talking in terms of numbers which are triple digit numbers in terms of the applications people are using. And finally, you're also saying what more to use with this, which will make it super effective and efficient. This is just brilliant, and I'm sure you're getting kudos from most of the B2B firms are using you guys. This is amazing. Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah, we didn't name ourselves, whatever visibility or finder.com. We didn't name ourselves costcutter.com. We deliberately called ourselves Productiv because that is the biggest and the main problem we are after solving. And that is really the core problem that technology is solving anyway. So I told you that we want to make a giant impact in the industry. That's why we started the company. And the impact really is we want to increase the productivity in general of all businesses using technology. We want to increase their productivity in a data-driven way. We are really just a data analytics company in some sense, right? We just show you the data. We show you the data in insightful forms that you can take these actions to be more productive.
No,
we don't go and start screen sharing in your Zoom link. Don't get us wrong. We tell you how to do that, and that it's good to do that, and so on and so forth.
Sure. I'm quite intrigued. How did this idea come to you guys? Because this seems like a lot of thought, right, in terms of understanding what's the problem and then saying, hey, this is what we'll do. How did that idea come to you guys?
It was, I would say it was a lot of brainstorming and a little bit of what we had seen in our personal or in our past work. So for example, when I was at Postmates, when I was at Postmates, there was no CIO, there was no VP of IT at the time. I don't know now. So it was kind of a mixed role, and I being, the head of technology, was conflated with saying, okay, why don't you also guide some of these processes? So one of the things was, literally the question was, well, how do we know we are secure? Our data is secure. Where all is it stored? Well, we don't know because we don't know what data storage applications the company is using. Well, how do we know? Well, we ask everybody. So we literally I literally created a Google Sheet and sent it out to the entire company saying, please fill all the applications that you are using as of today, and I'll ask you again in 3 months. And when we were thinking about this problem, I said, well, this is a real problem. I have personally done this. I know of a lot of people who basically say, we poll our employees every quarter, and then, half of them don't reply, half of them do this and that, to just get a handle of what do we have. And then beyond that, we did all of these things. Okay, fine. Now you have this. Well, I mean, to take, not to mention applications that Postmates uses or not, but let's take the analogy of saying, well, I have a subscription for Netflix, and I have a subscription for Amazon Prime Video, and a subscription for Disney Plus, and a subscription for Hulu. And my son also has another subscription on Netflix. What the hell is going on here? And by the way, HBO, we were watching Game of Thrones, so we bought a subscription. Since then, what the hell happened here? First of all, how many subscriptions do we have? Second, how many do we really need here, right?
Correct.
And then get into, okay, what do we get? How do we use them? And how do you, get more if you need to? So
awesome.
In personal life, this was a, kind of the analogy was always there. It's still there. Unfortunately, there is no productive solution to automate my personal life. But in business, we had seen enough that once we started, going down this path, our eyes started more and more opening wider, saying, oh, wait, we can do this. Oh, wait, we can do this beyond just finding out what you have. We can find out, what are you using? What are you not using? What are you using only a little, but you're paying a lot? What are you, how are you using the features? What is the core data that you need in all of this? And it was very surprising, right? We said, once we boil down to it, everything, there's only one thing we need to solve the problem. It's kind of the magic trick explained, which then makes it less interesting. But the magic trick explained is all of these are very complex problems, but really all you need is engagement data, which means if I can connect to your application vendors through APIs and get data from them on who's using what application at what time, just activity data, not what are they saying. So, I started the Zoom call at whatever, 8 o'clock. Roopa joined at 9 o'clock. Okay, fine. This is good enough information. Somebody started video, somebody started screen sharing. That's it. Activity level information about all applications. Then it's just a huge data analytics problem, right? Now you get all of this data and you can answer all of these questions. You can obviously answer, what applications do I have, right? You connect to a central source like your expense system. You say, okay, well, if people have applications, they must be logging into it, or they go through your login provider, single sign-on Okta kind of thing, or your expense systems, they must be paying for it, or your account system, payable systems, NetSuite, whatnot. So there are multiple systems we can talk to automatically get what do you have, and then we can go talk to those vendors to figure out the next level of things, saying what are you using and what are you not using in terms of features and whatnot. So it's a fairly smoothly flowing kind of a solution. It's harder to implement than to explain, obviously.
Sure.
But that's where Productiv came in, that we said, is it a big enough problem? Yes, it is. Every company wants it. Is it a solvable problem? We said, yeah, you kind of just solved it in words at least, right? You connect to this, get the data, connect to these applications in a recursive fashion and get their data, and then you analyze everything. And yeah, it's solvable. Is it solved? Not really. All of these people we talked to, they basically said, no, we're still looking for a good solution just for the base problem, let alone the advanced problems. So all three things were met, right? It was a big problem, unsolved, but solvable. And so, and it was the kind of a seed came from some personal experiences, as well as, I'm pretty sure other people advised us. There was a lot of brainstorming. I won't take everybody's name who advised us and kind of pointed us in the right direction.
Perfect. So because it involves a lot of data, and you did say it's a data analytics company, so I'm sure it did lead way to a lot of predictions, more in terms of science, right? And I think when you were just talking about your journey with what you do with your customers, you did mention how do you look for these insights. So in our language for Purple Quarter, we call behavioral, metrics model that we've managed to put in place. Similar, I see that Productiv has behavioral insights, patterns that you guys look for. Would you be able to tell us that what exactly is the science behind the whole piece? What is it that, from a technology perspective, that you guys solve?
Sure. So there is prediction, obviously, right? Initially we started ourselves as Productiv.ai, right? Because ultimately this is going to be an AI problem. Anytime you have data and you're doing data analysis to gather insights, it's eventually going to become an AI problem. Currently, the thing is that true AI, now, a fake AI kind of thing can be done with small data sets. A true AI needs a lot of data. And that we will get as we keep growing the company. The problem and the solution is the same. The mechanism of how you solve it evolves with the amount of data you have.
Okay.
So let me try to explain. Let's say I read data from your expense systems, right?
Okay.
Which is who filed, who filed an expense for any software applications. Right? Now, people will put in all sorts of random names in their expense reports. Nobody kind of puts in clean names in their expense reports of the application. So Salesforce would be called SFDC, would be called Sales F, or whatever. Initially, when we don't have it, we will build rules-based things to say this expense really belongs to Salesforce. This is the application name. What we're trying to guess is what is the actual name of the application based on all this data we got, right?
Right.
Initially, we will just have rules, right? Saying, okay, if it starts with sales and ends with, some CE, then whatever is in the middle is okay. It's Salesforce or things like that, right? Salesforce One is also Salesforce. SFDC is also Salesforce. We have built all of these rules. It could be that you went to Salesforce conference. You would have filed that expense as Salesforce conference. We may count it as Salesforce using that rule. We don't, because we understand this specific thing, but
Sure.
but we may count that because the rules are just, they are heuristics. They are created. They are created based on initial assumption of what the data will come in. As more and more data comes in, now we have seen the data from hundreds of companies, right? Let's say, in a couple of years, let's say we have thousands of companies whose data we have seen. Now we know really all variations of Salesforce that humans have used in those companies. Now, when the 1001th company comes in, there is really a very, very little chance that they use some name for Salesforce that we haven't seen before. Data helps us refine our algorithms, and eventually it becomes a machine learning thing where you look at a lot of data and say, this is what this data was classified as, so the next data will automatically be classified that way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're looking at algos going to ML. Yeah.
Exactly. Algos going to ML. So currently we are at mostly in algos land, right? Because the size of the data is such that algos actually work better because we can refine them far more quickly than ML will respond. And we don't have enough data to do ML as of now anyway. And we don't need it, as I mentioned, as of today. So that's kind of the core solution of the technology, which is you look at data and you try to find all of these, let's say 4 insights from the data. You look at multiple pieces of data and say, and I'll give you an example in a minute, but what applications do you have? So we take your expense reports, for example, and we take your login reports from SSO. We look at your network monitor, connect to that application and say, hey, you are monitoring the firewall. Okay, great. We are not interested in all the things that you are seeing on the network. Do you get the name of the website that people connect to? They say, yeah, of course we have it. We have far more data. We say, no, you take the far more data. What is the name of the website? Great, we have a list of them. These are the applications that you are connecting to. So people will have to do something to use the application, right? As I say, either follow the money or follow the bytes. We follow both and we figure out what is the list of applications. This algorithm gets better and better the more data we have. Similarly with where is the wastage, right? The more examples we see, we have some algorithms to find wastage, but the more examples we see, the more we can automate it to say, hey, you know what? We can just say, because we are using Zoom, I'll use Zoom as an example. Zoom has a professional license, a pro license, paid license, where you can host 1-hour meetings and do a few more things. And it also has a basic license where you can just, for example, if you and I were to have a one-on-one meeting for 30 minutes, we just need a basic license. Now, based on our meeting patterns over the month, I can give you the right license at the end of it. I can say, hey, she only does 30-minute meetings and really only does, one-on-one meetings or whatnot. So I can actually, she'll be perfectly happy with the basic license. She won't even know. Her experience would be the same, except I'll save $25 per person. Or the flip. No, I saw her have, kind of a 40-minute meeting and then it would have been cut off. So she immediately started another meeting with the same people. Oh man, she really needed a pro license. Why do I wait for her to file a ticket? And this is unproductivity, right? Or this is less efficiency that she's experiencing. Why don't I just upgrade her license to a pro license under the covers? Because I have learned from her pattern of using Zoom, what capabilities does she really need?
Sure.
And I can do this for all of my employees, which means at any point in time, every employee has exactly the right license that they need. This is going way beyond what are you using versus what are you not using and cutting this down. This is saying automate the rationalization. Similarly, automate the, or provide better productivity insights. Let's take an example of that. Let's take an example because you are in the recruiting space, I think, right? all my recruiters, so you assume you have a large recruiting team, and I tell you, hey, Roopa, and we'll stick with Zoom for a minute here. So I'll tell you, hey, Roopa, your team of 50 recruiters in Delhi, they use screen sharing in 70% of their candidate meetings, where at least there's one external participant.
Mm-hmm.
They use screen sharing in 80% of those meetings, and they close 60% of their candidates. Versus your Mumbai team, uses screen sharing in whatever 50% of their meetings and only close 40% of their candidates. No, this is not causal. Maybe your Delhi team is just better. Maybe there are some other things, right? Maybe there are more people willing to be hired in Delhi or whatnot. It's not causal, but it is a heavy enough correlation for you to go and say, wait a second, this kind of makes sense, right? If we use screen sharing with candidates, that means we must be showing them the product or giving them a demo or doing something, or maybe showing them a PowerPoint. Their experience must be better, and hence it's more likely that they will come back and we can close them. Right. If you just show this data to your Mumbai team, you know what your Mumbai leader will say? He or she will say this one thing: hey, wait a second, what is this thing that my team is not using screen sharing? I need training for this. I need better video equipment for this. I need a better machine so that we can do this. Whatever it is, I'm not going to let this be a factor in my gap of 40% closing and 60% closing. That's a huge gap. That's 50% uplift, right? Sure. This is a competitive edge. Now, these are your own two teams. If there are two different companies, this is a competitive edge. So it's just not increasing productivity for your own team by or parts of your team by doing data-driven analytics. It is actually a competitive edge. If I am doing it and you are not doing it, well, guess what? My teams are closing faster. You don't have that edge simply because you haven't analyzed the data to figure out how to get the maximum value of the technology that you have already bought, sure, that you are already using.
Sure.
Does this jive?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, yeah, I think you're trying to make me your customer as well. So, by giving me these.
You are very, very welcome.
So this is amazing in terms of understanding, because I think everyone correlates when you talk to them about their own businesses and what problems you solve, right? I'm sure you guys are doing that pretty well. But I did have a point for you. I noticed that while you were discussing, you said we don't have so much of data. So, there isn't, the AI is yet to come. Yeah. So what do you see in the future? Do you see that, before, let's say I want to procure a SaaS platform, do you see me coming to you first and saying, hey, do you think this will work? Because if we're already with you guys, will Productiv be able to tell me that if I go ahead and purchase this SaaS, is it going to help me or not? Do you see it going that way? I mean, they're taking inferences from you about purchase?
Absolutely. I mean, so, the solution keeps getting better with AI, right? With more and more data. And that's actually the beauty of the solutions. But at the same time, I don't want to kind of undercut our technology. Mm-hmm. The technology works beautifully today, right? I mean, we are talking about 98% accurate to 99% accurate kind of differences, and at large data sets kind of things, right? That 1% is the hardest to get. We if you come in today, and there are really a lot of customers who have large customers, small customers, from Ubers and Foxes of the world, very, very large customers, to some mid-size and small customers as well. We ingest all the data. We provide them insights. The algorithms work beautifully. It's just when I say we want to do AI, it is to say, hey, is there a future? Yes, of course there is a future. In Amazon recommendations, right? You can provide recommendations to users just based on, let's say you have 1,000 users and they say, and based on analyzing their shirt and tie patterns, you would be able to figure out that blue ties go with black shirts, right? I mean, you will be able to figure out even at smaller scale by looking for specific insights. Once you have, 1 billion such data points, you can figure out things that you were not even looking for, right? Oh, the blue tie works with black, that is fine, but the shade of blue and shade of black, you have more insights into what shade goes with what shade, right? Dark blue maybe doesn't go with light black. I don't know, I'm making this up. In SaaS applications, I'm more versed, so the analogies are not really that perfect. The core insights, the most useful insights, can be done by algorithms. We are already doing that. Mm-hmm. The AI, of course, is the future. So I think what the question you are asking maybe is, what is the technology, not just in Productiv, but outside of Productiv, that is going to be useful in the future, right? To take a broader industry view, I think the industry, because of many building blocks that have happened, the building blocks that have happened really in the last, 5-10 years, is that computation has become very cheap. Mm-hmm. Data storage has become very cheap. AWS is no longer the only player, there's Azure, there's GCP, there are more things coming by. Yeah. So both getting the data, analyzing the data, storing the data has become cheaper and faster. These are the building blocks that the industry has been building and providing to us. Mm-hmm. Because of these building blocks, and there are multiple algorithms or techniques on top of these then that enable AI. If you can actually analyze a lot of data and store it and analyze it, then you can do AI better. And now, so you have translate.google.com. It was not possible earlier when the cost of computation, the cost of storage was so high, or the cost of getting the data over the network. So those costs came down, these problems became solvable. Now you can have real-time translation of a language into a different language. So ultimately the core is that data is becoming more and more useful and available to solve all problems. When we solve it via, in a specific fashion, we call it AI. Okay. When we solve it in a different fashion, we used to call it big data. The core of it is the same, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to have data-driven insights for doing their job. 10 years ago, when CMOs, if you remember, chief marketing officers, chief marketing officers used to say, well, where should we put our advertisements, in which magazines? So you just pick up your favorite magazine, Time magazine, let's put it there. At that point, it was not data driven. They could not collect how many people actually looked at my page, my ad in Time magazine, how many of them actually came to my website after or bought my product in the store after they looked at my ad in Time magazine. There was no attribution. Right. With technology, with digital ads, Google invented it, and then Facebook adopted it, and so on and so forth. Now we can track almost in real time what's going on. Maybe we can track even too much of who's looking at what and what actions they are taking, right? CMOs, their life was less data driven before, but it became super data driven after, for example, Google Analytics or Amplitude, these kind of tools came in and gave them data driven ways of running their marketing campaigns. A Gong.ai came in and said, let me record all your sales conversations, transcribe them automatically, because I have this voice to text thing now. This technology building block is available. And then I will do automatic analysis on that text to tell you which of these sales calls we did not say the right words, or the customer sounded that they were asking a question that we didn't answer. So a sales manager now does not need to listen to 1,000 calls. She can just really, the technology can tell her, here are the 50 that you need to pay attention to. Sure. Right? And she becomes more efficient because there's data behind it. And so that's where the world will go to. I think the technologies that will come up that people will use more are things that will solve in a data-driven way, problems for somebody. Like we are solving the problem for CIOs. CIOs, at least we believe that before Productiv, could not run their life in a very data-driven way. Mm-hmm. We have 245 applications that we know of that are in the Google sheet somewhere. We don't even know what we are not using. That's not data-driven. Now they can, and now they can make very intelligent decisions based on the data and the insights we are giving to them. Replicate this to all the jobs, to recruiters, to I mean, every single job in the enterprise, or maybe even outside of the enterprise, every single activity that we do, every single decision that we make should be data oriented. We have already done this without realizing it, maybe. Like when we go to Amazon, we look at recommendations now, right? What is this recommended for somebody like me? There is personalization based on your profile that Amazon is doing.
Yep.
That is a huge data driven insight that's coming to us. Um, it takes a lot of work for Amazon to put up that recommendation in front of you. It's not an advertisement. They have done a lot of analysis to say, this is what you may be interested in.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Personalization and search is really helpful to customers, like most customers across the world, I think.
Absolutely. So that is one application of data-driven insights, right? We have seen search becoming more personalized, recommendations becoming more personalized. I'm saying from that application in consumer, it is the same principle, data-driven decision making is coming to your doorstep, regardless of your role or regardless of the decision you are making. So if that's a technology, and again, I am biased because I'm in this field, but I have seen this for more than a decade now. The word has been moving continuously this way, whether it was my work in Microsoft or in eBay or in Amazon or in Postmates or in Productive. All these companies solve different problems. The common thread was the more data-driven insights you can have, the better your products will become.
Absolutely. Actually, I resonate with this thought process, not just because, over a decade we've been looking at data, but if I don't know how many viewers or people who are watching this podcast will resonate with what I'm going to say, but most often or not, we make choices based on behavioral or patterns we've seen historically, or even when we need to actually judge a specific person, subject, information, we go with historical pattern, which is data, right? You're actually viewing that and then making an informed choice of whether you want to buy or whether you want to be friends with a person. It could be in any specific paradigm of life. Just that we didn't know that, hey, this is data, and we're actually looking at it and we're making an informed choice. Yeah, I'm with you. It's actually data driven decision making is something which has been flowing with us forever, but you guys have articulated this in a very informed way, which is why it's easier for us now to comprehend and say, hey, yeah, this is correct. This is how we need to go about. So I think phenomenal job, yeah, being done by Productiv there. In 2 years, the kind of problem, the depth, amazing. So that actually brings me to a spot of asking you another question, which is different from what I've asked you so far. Most founders, when I talk to them, they say that, hey, big company guy, and if I need to hire this guy as a CTO in a startup, it's not going to work because the guy's going to come with, heavy maintenance, preconceived notions. But you've done the flip. Yeah? It's not just about flipping to a startup. You've done the flip of becoming a founder as well. You've managed these large elephant-sized teams, 100 plus teams, and then now you've moved on to being a co-founder. So tell me, how does this switch work for you? Was it like a button where you switched on, off, or has it been a transition? How has it worked for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I asked myself that, and that was one of the fears that I had when I was moving from Amazon to Postmates, saying, can I actually handle it? But as I figured out, I had all my previous managers to thank for it. They had really, really trained me very well. In almost every company, for one reason or another, I had started the teams. Like first person on the team or something like that, right? In Microsoft, I was the first engineer on the team back in '99 before the team grew, and then more senior people joined. And so I didn't know it back then, but I was really working in a very well-funded startup. We did not have probably the funding constraints, or maybe our VP did, who was fighting for funding from big Microsoft execs. I had no idea about that. But even though we were within Microsoft, we really were building a business from scratch. I worked on Microsoft Link. It was called eventually Microsoft Link. Now it's called Skype for Business, or now latest version is called Microsoft Teams. But when I was working on it, it was really the first person on it. I was like, what are we working on? They're like, we don't know. We'll do something in real time networking, but we don't know what we'll build. That is the startup, right? We figured it out. We built $1 billion business. In eBay, when I joined, my manager said, well, rebuild the shopping cart and the checkout experience for eBay.
Okay.
And I said, this is a large company, right? You were talking about eBay's main shopping cart. They said, yes, build the technology and, get us, better results. And I started in Seattle. I was the only person on the team. I was working with some engineers in the headquarters in San Jose, but I was building a new team, net new team. Then in eBay, I built another net new team. In Amazon, when I started, really was, hey, this is a net new business. Amazon is going to start, Ashish. There is some seed team. There is some thinking that has happened. So it wasn't completely from scratch, but it was very, very early stages. It was really a startup, right? Like into some extent, the Amazon business was, Amazon wants to own the vehicles, the big trucks to move its goods between warehouses and from ports to warehouses and whatnot, right? It's a freight movement. And most of this thing was happening through third parties. Not most, actually 100%. How many trucks did Amazon own when I joined? 0.
Okay.
Right. By the time I left, it was thousands. Right?
Sure.
So it was a startup, yes, a very well-funded one, and with a lot of support. But that DNA was somehow just there to, I did not inherit a 100-person team in any company. In Postmates, I started with a 37 people engineering team, and I tripled it to, more than 130 people. So there was always, and part of that was building new teams from scratch, hiring leaders from scratch. So I think I got lucky, in the sense that I had been trained for it. In general, though, if somebody is doing it, I would say it's not about big company or small company culture. It's about recognizing what do you need in a small company. A big company is like a cruise ship, right? It has a lot of momentum. It has a lot of horsepower, a lot of people around you, 5,000 people working on the cruise ship with you, and a lot more customers, obviously, right? It's very powerful. It's very luxurious. A startup is like a speedboat. It's very small. You and your co-founder and a couple other people are on that speedboat. Your power, your advantage is your speed. For short distances, you can outrun any cruise ship. For your agility is your advantage. You can turn directions. If you're going this way and you say, no, this is not the right way, you can turn. Your agility is your superpower. As long as we understand what the job needs and we are open to that, and we kind of give ourselves the space to learn that. At least I have found out that most people do find. I mean, I have plenty of friends who are co-founders who also came from big companies, maybe worked in some small companies in the middle or not, but they are doing really, really well. Hell, my co-founders themselves, right? I mean, Munish was at LinkedIn,
right?
And he's amazing. And Jody did have a mix of startup and startup and big company experience, but she was running Google Analytics, for God's sake. I mean, the biggest thing you can run, probably, right? So, I mean, all three of us are examples that if you understand what the new company, what a startup needs, and what are the specific things that you need, what are behaviors you need when you are in a speedboat versus in the whatever is called the cockpit, not a cockpit of a cruise ship or whatever is the driver's position. These are just different vehicles you are driving.
Sure.
It doesn't take that long to learn if you give yourself the space to learn.
Absolutely. So here's my final question before we wrap up. In terms of Ashish, I wanted to check with you on if this is a good medium for you to actually talk to most people who would want mentors like yourselves, especially from technologists. People get extremely in awe when they are co-founders and who are CTOs. So to all those technologists out there, if they want to come join you or if they want to really follow you, what are a few things that you'd like to tell them, or what is it that you'd want to talk about from a productive standpoint or from just being themselves out there? Anything, any words of suggestion?
Yeah, I think you asked multiple questions in there. One is, if people want to join hands, absolutely. The biggest strength that that Productive has is our people. We are absolutely filled with top talent who, we are very fortunate that they've decided to join us. So if there's somebody out there who says, hey, I should really, really want to join Productive, please send me a note. We are always hiring. For people who say, hey, I have a question, I want to brainstorm this with Ashish or somebody else, time permitting, obviously. I mean, I'm not saying I have infinite time there, or capability even to answer those questions. But I'm definitely open to doing my best. Just reach out via whatever mechanism, LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you. In general, the guidance, if you say what I would say is find the right problem to solve. Right? I'm infamous for asking what is the problem we are trying to solve. There are way too many founders who get into a solution and all the other things around a solution. How will we build it? Who will build it? Who will buy it? All of those things. And then when I ask them often of, what is the problem you're solving? And they don't really know. They know the solution. They explain the solution to me. They don't explain the problem to me. Find the problem, which really you can state the problem without stating the solution at all. Right? How somebody solved it is irrelevant. What was the problem is the most relevant part. The solution that Uber has provided is not a mobile application which does this and that. Yeah. The problem that Uber has solved, multiple problems Uber has solved. One of the problems that Uber has solved is you can go from your home to the airport in a predictable way with a predictable fare in a more reliable fashion.
Right.
Right. So if we know what problem we are solving, I think we all do better as founders. That is probably the number one thing that I would tell founders. The second is really, there is never going to be a right time. We get too much into analysis paralysis. Find a problem you want to solve, find a couple of people who are passionate about it and share values with you, and go try things. It actually works out more often than it doesn't, provided those two things are true, right? That's the recipe for success, at least as far as I know. But again, take it with a grain of salt. I'm the first time founder. I've done exactly one company as a founder. So this is not, this is not Warren Buffett telling you to pick stocks. I'm not the Warren Buffett of tech founders.
Sure. So this is to most of the viewers out there. I'd like to recommend, if you want to get in touch with Ashish, like he's already said, you can use the LinkedIn, Twitter version. Also to people who want to work with him, I think it will be a brilliant opportunity because his leadership style is pretty evident even on this podcast. He's actually very elaborate in terms of getting rid of ambiguity and giving you clarity in whatever you need to do. In fact, you can see the way that the problem was defined and how he went about solving it and what is it in for customers. So any of those B2B customers watching this podcast will also have a fair share of view in understanding what Productiv is really solving. Thank you so much for being on this podcast, Ashish. I really enjoyed being on this one and getting to know more about what Productiv is up to.
Thank you, Roopa. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.